It is Sunday, April 28th, and the Splash Zone is back in your life. I am Matt Modai, and I'm going to have that's right, five NBA player props for you guys to hammer for today's NBA betting slate. Obviously, before we can get into today's bangers, we got to do a recap from the last time that we talked, and I didn't have a video on Saturday, so I'm going to recap Friday's and Saturday's games, which unfortunately was brutal. Between Friday and Saturday, I only got 2 of my 8 picks correct, so we went 2 and 6 down about 4.75 units. Luckily, heading in to Friday's slate, we had a 7-1 record. So if you look at those 4 days, we're up about 1 unit in that 4-day stretch, but obviously 2 days that were amazing, 2 days that were brutal. Hopefully today we can turn it around and have a very good day. On the entire season, we're up about the 113 unit mark of profit. And then if you look at the playoffs specifically, it feels worse than it actually is, but we're up a little over 5 units since the regular season ended. So it's not like it's been terrible. You just wish that we had a little bit more sustained success after having 2 bad days in a row. Again, let's hope that we can do that today. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Then, of course, like the video, comment, all that good stuff does help me out a ton. And then the last thing that I will mention before I get into today's bangers is that I do have a dub club for $5 a month where I send out all of my picks that would just get sent directly to your phone. So for the playoffs specifically, books have been releasing odds so early that I've been trying to send out plays early as well. For example, for today's games, 3 of the 5 plays that you are seeing on this YouTube video, I sent out last night. So it's kind of the logic for being on the dub club. It's the same picks that you get on YouTube and Twitter that you get on Dub Club. You just get them sent early to you so you can get them in before odds change and stuff like that. So if you want to pay the $5 a month, you can. If not, you just get everything for free on YouTube and on Twitter. I'm cool with either option. Enough of that. Now we can get into today's bangers. You're only as good as your most recent bangers. So let's see if we can splash around and get wet today. Starting in the Bucks versus Pacers game, I'm taking Pascal Siakam over 24.5 points. Minus 120 odds at bet 365. So one theme that you'll see today with the 5 plays that we have, we're rocking with the flip-flop method pretty hard for today's slate. You know, it didn't work out great for us yesterday, but it's something that I do believe in, and I'm confident it's going to turn around for us today. And that's exactly what we're doing with this Pascal Siakam pick. He was awesome, legitimately awesome through the first 2 games of this series. He had 36 points in game 1, 37 points in game 2. So it's only natural for his scoring to dip a little bit after that type of success in game 3. That's what happened. Game 3, he only scored 17 points, going 7 of 17 from the field. But if you look at the Pacers box score in that game, a lot of outlier performances, just in terms of how many players they had score pretty decent points. They had 6 players score in the double digits, with the highlight of that being Miles Turner, who scored 29 points. Both of those things are pretty decent outliers. 6 players in double digits is a lot. And then Miles Turner, who's not known for being an electric scorer, scoring 29 points, that's definitely an outlier as well. So what I expect to happen in this game is I expect the volume and efficiency of all of those guys, basically not named Pascal Siakam, all the guys who had good games in game 3, not all of them are going to have good games in game 4. So their average, not each player, obviously, but on average, their usage rate, their efficiency, their field goal attempts are going to go down a little bit, which just leaves room for Pascal Siakam's usage rate and field goal attempts and all that stuff to go up to what it was in games 1 and 2. Maybe he's not going to score in the high 30s like he did in games 1 and 2, but we just need him to get to 25 points to cash out this bad boy for tonight. And if you look at the first 2 games compared to game 3, games 1 and 2, he had 25 and 23 field goal attempts. Game 3, he only had 17. So that seems to be the pretty clear outlier. And I'm guessing Siakam, again, is going to go back. Higher usage rate, scoring a bunch of points, hopefully getting us to the 25-point number. That's our first play. Next up, in the Knicks versus 76ers game, I'm taking Tyrese Maxi over 25.5 points. Minus 109 odds at Bet Rivers. You can also get it at minus 110 at FanDuel as well. Another fade of recent results with this one, actually very similar to the Pascal Siakam play. In games 1 and 2, he scored 33 and 35 points. Then in game 3, he went under this total. Granted, he did score 25 points, so it wasn't quite like Siakam, who scored in the teens. Literally, we would have gotten hooked if we had taken him over 25.5 in game 3. His field goal attempts were actually pretty comparable to games 1 and 2, right? He just didn't have a great shooting game. He went 9 of 21 from the field, so not a great game from him from a shooting perspective. But the 21 field goal attempts, that's not dramatically different from what he had in games 1 and 2. He just didn't shoot as well. Also, another outlier performance in that game. Joel Embiid scored 50 points. That's right, 50 points for Joel Embiid. Now, obviously, Embiid is awesome, and Embiid is going to take the most shots and have the highest usage rate on the Sixers. Embiid is also not going to score 50 points game over game. Even if you say Embiid's going to drop 40, that's still 10 points to go to the rest of the team. And it's only natural that in a game Embiid scores 50 points, Maxi doesn't quite blow up like he did in the first 2 games. What I expect to happen in this game is Embiid probably has another awesome game, but the Knicks probably play him a little bit tighter than they did in game 3, saying we're not going to let him blow up for 50 points again. And that will just lead to more usage rate, more field goal attempts, more everything for Tyrese Maxey, who I think is ready to step up, right? Like I think he's gonna be able to take the challenge if the Knicks are saying, hey, Embiid, anybody else beat us on the Sixers aside from him. I also like Maxey's 3-point attempts in the first 3 games as well. He attempted 9, 11, and 8 3-point attempts in the first 3 games. He hasn't really had a blow-up game from deep. In game 2, he shot 5 of 11 from the field, so obviously from 3-point range, I should say, which obviously 5 made 3-pointers is a lot. But 5 of 11 is still a sub 50% shooting game. So I do like his 3-point plays as well, but if you look at his 3-point lines, like the odds themselves, priced at 3.5 with the over heavily juiced. So I just really didn't think that there was a ton of value on his 3-pointers. But either way, I think he is due for a blow-up game from 3, which would obviously just help his points as well. So I love this Tyrese Maxey one. The first 2 plays are very similar in logic. Next up, we're heading to the Clippers versus Mavericks game, and I'm taking PJ Washington over 1.5 made 3-pointers, plus 120 odds at Bet Rivers. Another beautiful fade of recent results with this one, and also a play. I think PJ Washington is going to come out pretty intense in game 4 after having a very chippy game 3, a game in which he got kicked out. So we're fading recent results, and then I'm guessing, like I said, he's going to be a little bit fired up after how game 3 went. But just looking at how games 1 and 2 went versus game 3. So games 1 and 2, he cashed out 2 or more made 3-pointers. He made 2 in game 1. He made 3 in game 2. Last game, no luck. He was 0 of 4 from 3-point range. Played slightly less minutes than he played in games 1 and 2 because he got kicked out. Now, he still played 34 minutes, so I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, he barely played in game 3. No, 34 minutes is a pretty decent amount of playing time, but he would have played more if he did not get kicked out. And he's a pretty valuable role player on the Mavericks. Like, he is not someone that has any type of risk of having his minutes cut or anything like that. His defense is very important, and the fact that he will spot up on the corners and shoot from passes from Luka, that is very important as well. And he has a pretty decent matchup advantage itself when it just comes to where he takes his 3-pointers versus where the Clippers give them up. Look at the entire season. The Clippers were a below average defense in terms of allowing corner 3-point attempts. And that's where PJ Washington takes the majority of his 3-point attempts as well. I'm not going to sit here and say the Clippers were like the worst defense in the NBA at guarding the 3-point line, but they were definitely below average. And since PJ Washington has been a member of the Mavericks, he's led the team in 3-point attempts, and that has carried over to the playoffs as well. So after hitting it in games 1 and 2, but not hitting it in game 3, I'm ready to go back in on PJ Washington, who I think is going to be fired up, ready to have an awesome game in game 4. Next up, we're heading to the Timberwolves versus Suns game, and I'm taking Anthony Edwards over 5.5 assists plus 140 odds at DraftKings. I've been really impressed with Anthony Edwards as a passer, specifically in this playoff series. I think he has been phenomenal, just consistently making the right read. He's always been a playoff killer, despite the fact that how young he is, and that this is only his 3rd playoff going through the playoffs. He's always been a playoff killer in terms of scoring. But his passing in this series specifically, compared to previous years' playoff runs, is wildly different. Consistently making the right pass, moving the ball when he needs to, not being a ball hog. And he's making some pretty advanced reads, some pretty advanced kickouts to open shooters on the corner as well. So with that thought in mind, here are his assist numbers through the first 3 games. 6 in game 1, cashed this over. 8 in game 2, very much cashed this over. And then only 5 in game 3. But the most important number out of all the numbers that I gave, despite the fact that he only had 5 assists last game, he had 13 potential assists. That's the most important thing here. That is something that you can generally count on game over game. Not assists, not the conversion ratio, but the potential assists. So he had 13 last game, and then he had 11 in game 2 as well. So double-digit potential assist numbers, 11 and 13 the last 2 games. In game 1, he only had 9, but he still had 6 assists in that game as well. Now, I will admit his conversion rate was probably an outlier in terms of it was too high in games 1 and 2, like 6 on 9 potential assists and then 8 on 11 is a pretty high conversion rate. That's not something that you can rely on. But it also was an outlier too low in game 3, only having 5 assists on 13 potential assists. So I think these two numbers kind of normalize in game 4. And in a closed out game, I will admit I was tempted to just take his points, saying he's going to just put these players, put the Suns out of their misery and dominate them in game 4. But instead, I like for him to get the 6 assist number. I've been really impressed with his passing, like I said. And at plus 140 odds, that value is incredible. That's our 4th play. Last up, 5th and final pick of the video. Clippers versus Mavericks. We're heading back to that game, and I'm taking James Harden under 2.5 made 3-pointers, plus 162 odds at FanDuel. You guys know the drill here. Whenever you see a blow-up game from James Harden, you fade him the next game. That's exactly what we did from games 1 to 2. That cashed out for us. Now we're running it back for game 4 as well. Last game, in game 3, James Harden went 5 of 8 from 3-point range. The fact that we're getting plus 162 odds on him to go under 2.5, that is phenomenal value. When I did that last time, when I took his under 3-point attempts, it was at plus 120 or plus 125. Now we're getting plus 160 just because he had another game in which he had a good shooting game. But we've seen this movie with Harden a million times before, right? He's the ultimate. There's no higher flip-flop type of playoff player than James Harden. I went through all of these numbers heading into game 2 when we cashed out this banger, but I can go through it once again if you forgot or you didn't watch that video. And it's a 14-game sample size, so it's not like obviously an entire season, but 14 games is not nothing. And we're going back the last 2 seasons. So game 1 of his first playoff series last year, he made 7 3-pointers. Pretty good. Next game, he went 2 of 8, going under the 2.5 number. Game 3 of that series, 3 of 7, so going over 2.5. And then the next game, he went 2 of 5. That series was a sweep. Those are the first 4 games. Literally every other game, over 2.5, under, over, under. Now let's go into the next series against the Boston Celtics. Game 1, amazing game. One of the best games I've ever seen. He made 7 3-pointers in game 1. Guess how he performed in games 2 and 3? 2 of 13 combined in games 2 and 3. After having a rough 2-game stretch, look at what he did in game 4. Another one of the best games I've ever seen in my entire life. 6 of 9 from 3-point range, scoring 40-plus points. Look at the next 3 games combined after that. 2 of 12 in games 5 through 7 in another blown series for James Harden and for the Sixers. Now we have 3 games of a sample size this year. Game 1, 6 of 11. Great game. Game 2, 2 of 10. Not a great game. Game 3, 5 of 8. Great game. I will admit that the 3-point attempts that he's getting up does make this a little bit concerning, but I've seen this too much with Harden. I have a hard time believing he's going to have another great shooting game like he's had in 2 of the 3 games. And if he does, probably going to fade him again in game 5 if that happens. So let's hope that it doesn't happen and that we can cash out this juicy plus money banger for James Harden. And that's all we got. Appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out my Duck Club if you are interested in getting everything sent to you for $5 a month. Appreciate everybody for watching and have a good one.